Hi everyone, my name is Adilson Vilarinho Terra. I'm a production engineer from Fluminense Federal University, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and it is a pleasure to be here to talk about the paper entitled Proposal of Criteria for Selection of Oil Tank Maintenance Companies at Transpetro through Multi-Methodological Approaches. The paper has five authors: Eric Brand Carvalho from Fluminense Federal University, Miguel Ângelo Leles from Fluminense Federal University and Naval Systems Analysis Center, Adilson Vilarinho Terra from Fluminense Federal University and the Naval Systems Analysis Center, Professor Dr. Carlos Francisco Simões Gomes from Fluminense Federal University, and Professor Dr. Marcos dos Santos from Military Institute of Engineering and the Naval Systems Analysis Center. So, this presentation is structured in five topics. First, introduction. Second, basic theoretical framework. Then, methodology. Then, application and discussion. Then, conclusion. So, uh, significant engineering works are commonly carried out by companies specializing in this type of service, especially when it comes to the maintenance and rehabilitation of tanks and other static equipment that store oils and derivatives. Given the specificity, complexity, and dangerousness of the services involved, not even a large part of the companies that claim to be able and operating in the market currently ended up satisfactorily executing such ventures. Despite knowing the maintenance process, Brazilian public companies in this field, such as Transpetro and Petrobras, ended up resorting to such service because they do not have specialized labor in their technical staff. Uh, in their technical staff primary end up activity of the companies. So it is also true that there are limitations arising from the law 13.303 from 2016, which provides for the contracting of services by public companies and mixed economy companies. However, certain types of certain types of hiring allow the selection of bidders based on technical and not purely on financial criteria. In this sense, the present study aims to provide, through the application of a decision-making approach known as value-focused thinking (VFT), a selection of criteria considered fundamental by technical staff to evaluate candidate companies for a given maintenance service in a more holistic way. To choose a specific company, we applied the multi-criteria analysis method known as Gaussian AHP. Uh, so, uh, so the maintenance and rehabilitation of tanks is a common and necessary practice in oil companies, such as Petrobras, the biggest company in this field, in the biggest Brazilian company in this field. Um, the later and objective of study of this presentation currently has a tanking park of 543 tanks spread over 20 waterway terminals and 27 land terminals, constantly needing to rehabilitate its equipment throughout Brazil. Although the time elapsed between tank maintenance is at least 10 years and may receive additional deadlines according to the deterioration control measures implemented, the amount of tanks make the demand for maintenance practically constant in the company's reality. Considering that such maintenance is not performed by the company itself, is not performed by company itself, except for more straightforward cases, the company has to seek each new bidding process engineering company specialized in this type of work. So, um, so we use the VFT approach, or the valued focused think approach. That that is a tool that serves as an auxiliary way to make decisions in general. Halfkini states that such an approach has a value-oriented bias, unlike other approaches that may focus on pre-existing alternatives. In other words, the implementation of this process aims to identify which values a decision maker should take as a parameters for this decision making, not limited to the analysis of the alternatives. So, VFT can be considered composed of two activities. First is to determination of what is desired, and the second referring to the discovery of how to obtain it. And the most significant benefits of using this approach are creating better alternatives to any decision-making problems and understanding decision-making problems in the form of opportunities to decide. This method has four auxiliary procedures for its use. First, identifying the objectives, classifying the objectives. Third, creating alternatives. And fourth, examining objectives to identify decision-making opportunities. So, we applied the new Gaussian AHP method that is a multi-criteria method proposed by Santos, Costa, and Gomes in 2021, and this method presented a new approach concerning the original method by Saat, the AHP method by Saat, presenting a sensitive analysis based on the Gaussian factor. In other words, with such an approach, the weighting of relative importance between the criteria is given by the existing values for each of these criteria and not the pairwise comparison done in the traditional AHP method. This approach has the primary advantage of reducing the decision maker's cognitive effort to compare the listed criteria. So, in general terms, this method serves as a measurement tool by staggering the analysis of paired comparisons based on expert decision-making's judgments. Thus, through a hierarchization of the global system, the method analyzes the relative importance of established criteria and provides, based on this importance, a ranking for the outlined alternatives. Here we have the 7 steps of the Gaussian AHP method, and in the step 1 we have to establish the decision matrix. In step 2, calculate the average of the alternatives. Step 3, calculate the standard deviation of the alternative on criteria. Step 4, calculate the Gaussian factor for each criterion. And step 5, product of Gaussian factor by the decision matrix. Step 6, normalization of results. And step 7, the last step, obtaining the new ranking. And this is the Gaussian AHP method step by step. In the methodology, at the end of the theoretical framework, to organize the method of analysis to be proposed, we established this flowchart with the steps of the actions in this work. So we have this workflow of study actions. In this step 1, we conduct an interview with specialists in tank maintenance. In step 2, we elaborate the fundamental objectives with the auxiliary of the Vft approach. Next, if the goals approved, we have the elaboration of the means and goals network, also with the Vft method. If the network were approved, we have the establishment of decision criteria. And 5, comparison between alternatives by the Gaussian AHP method, and 6, analysis, discussion, and the conclusion about the results. With data collected in the interview process, questions derivated from the Vft approach, and the detailed information, the values were collected and the objectives were set. So finally, we established the criteria to be used for the decision making, and we had the criteria based on fundamental objectives. So we had 4 criteria, that is C1, scope runtime, C2, total costs of construction, C3, integrity risk degree, and C4, recorded accident rate. First, it should be noted that to maintain the confidentiality of information restricted to the company, fictitious values and names were created for the companies involved to exemplify the method's applicability to possible real cases. Okay? At first, we applied values to alternative companies considered here as careless, accelerated, and slow. Values are shown in the table below. But such values need to be normalized, that is, replaced under the same quantitative basis of comparison to homogenize the different metrics of each of the criteria as expressed in this table. So we have the matrix of alternatives by criteria, and then in this slide we have the normalized matrix. Below the normalized matrix, we have the subsequent steps proposed by the method. Each criterion means, standard deviations, and Gaussian factor, namely the ratio between standard deviation and mean, are then calculated. So the Gaussian factor. So as a conclusion of the Gaussian AHP method, the normalized matrix shown in the previous slide is then multiplied by the normalized Gaussian factor in each of the listed criteria, resulting in the relative ranking values among the companies highlighted in this table. In this table here. So this is the results of the Gaussian AHP method. Okay? As a conclusion, we had that the present study could show new ways to approach a contract based on historical data of companies already consolidated in the market and beyond the financial criteria. In this sense, the implementation of the Vft and Gaussian AHP approaches proved to be possible valuable tools for Transpetro and for Petrobras to realize specific contracts. In the illustrative case, the company Slow, although with longer construction time, proved to be the best of the options since it meets the criteria of safety and integrity, no longer more variable to Transpetro. So, to end this presentation, I would like to take the opportunity to invite all of you to visit the Operational Research House YouTube channel, where you can find classes, tutorials, and real applications of the operational research. Thank you for patience and attention. Bye-bye.